Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Richard Stone. Good afternoon, Richard.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. It's great to see you on, and we've had a great chat before here. So, Richard, tell us, who are you, what do you do, and where are you from?
So I'm Richard Stone. I do a few things. I run my own main contracting business where we act as a principal contractor, delivering external repairs and decorations, block refurbishments, and passive fire protection work in the block management industry. I coach and mentor other business owners, and I've got my own podcast called On the Block, and I'm massively banging the drum for men's mental health when I'm not doing all of the above. And when I'm not doing all of that, I'm a husband and a dad.
That should have probably come first. There's some people.
It probably should. But you talk about fire in my belly, and they're all pretty equal. I'm pretty passionate about all of those things. But I think one of the reasons that I've been successful is that I have always put so much energy and passion into what I do at work. That's been, it was why my first marriage failed, because I was so job pissed, my wife would say. But I can't help it. It's who I am. It's what makes me me. I genuinely love what I do. I love helping the customers that we've got, and I love helping other people. And one of the things that when I set the business up originally, I wanted to help people solve their problems with property that was in a poor state. We've applied for and we've registered the trademark house harassment, where people sort of have got a property that they kind of don't quite feel the same way as they did when they first bought it. And our mission is kind of about helping people to sort of overcome that and get back to the point where they feel that sense of pride that they had when they first got the keys to their home. And to cure that, and one of the things that I've kind of done during lockdown really is go back and actually think a little bit deeper about what my why is and reevaluate what that why actually meant. And then what I've kind of established is that, yes, it is about that, but at a kind of a deeper, more core level, it's actually just about helping people, because the enjoyment and the sense of fulfillment I get out of mentoring and coaching other people is equal to, if not more than, delivering a profitable project. And that's what made me kind of sort of realise that actually that is just as important, if not more so, than making a success of my contracting business, is actually to be helping, coaching and mentoring other SME owners, and not just people that have got sort of SME businesses, but sole traders and guys that are literally one-man band subcontractors that are just sort of still on the tools and want to make the transition off the tools. So that's kind of what sort of made me want to go down that road of helping other people and leverage the kind of experience and the management training and the courses and the mentoring and the money that I've spent and others have spent on my personal development. I want to kind of be able to leverage that and give other people the benefit of that without them actually having necessarily needing to incur all of that cost and time. Because it's not just about learning from when you're successful. I've had some pretty epic failures. I was on the stage where I was almost bankrupt. I had to do an IVA 9 years ago because the company I worked for, as a result of their banking crisis, all their credit funding was pulled, and although we were profitable and we had a good strong pipeline of work, ultimately the banks put us in a position where we couldn't carry on trading, which I'd actually spent quite a lot of my own personal money on materials and stuff to support some of the projects that we were working on when cash was tight. And obviously when the banks pulled the plug, I lost that. So yeah, it was quite challenging, and I learned an awful lot, and I've probably learned more from some of those times that have been really, really, really hard than some of the success and the awards and stuff that we've also won. So I kind of just want to document and use all of that experience, good, bad and ugly, and the passion that I've got to help other people so they don't have to go through those lessons in business and life, and they can be more successful quicker without having to suffer some of that pain.
It makes sense. I mean, that's essentially what you're paying a mentor for, right? Someone who's been through the mill, got spot out, chewed out, trod on the way, and you they're there to try and fast track you through that or guide you, hopefully, right?
That's a really interesting point, actually, because one of my pet hates is people that stand there and want to coach and mentor people, and they haven't actually done it themselves. There's a world of people that are marketing themselves online as coaches, and you sort of say, well, okay. And I did it. I mean, I've got 4 different mentors. I mean, my podcast is also uses the same agency as you do. And I do some mentoring stuff with some of the people from that same business. But I've also got other mentors. I've got a mentor in Ireland. I've got a coach in Ireland. I've got a mentor in Scotland. And I've got a personal coach, and I've got somebody that's coaching me at the moment to write my book. And one of the things that I always look for is actually, I'll learn from anybody, but I'm not going to be as invested in it, I think, probably, and as freely willing to take on board their advice or to listen to their advice if they've not walked the walk themselves. Because talking the talk is really cheap. You know, anybody can sort of listen to a few bits and start chatting stuff. But actually, have you actually been there and been there when the chips are down? Have you actually worked in businesses? Have you had to make those kind of tough calls that sometimes in business you have to do? I know your business story's been one of some highs and some extreme highs and some points that have been quite challenging. And I think that unless you actually have experienced both ends of that kind of emotional journey and business journey, I don't know that actually you're really qualified to be coaching and mentoring other people.
Absolutely. I think it's like a lot of people sort of, I like the adage of people saying, you know, you need to explain, how do you explain to a fish what water is? You know, it's the same way with, I think unless you've been in the dark place, you know, to know the light, you got to see the dark. And that's, I think if you've been in those dark places and you know how bad it can be, and especially if you're, you know, you're getting down to the IVA and all the rest, and I'm sure life's getting a wee bit dark and interesting. You talked about mental health there as well. So absolutely. I think if you've been there, or you experienced something or something similar, it puts you, you know, you stand out.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, we say it to the children, and we've had a couple of conversations because we're trying to kind of use Corona and COVID. I'm never sure which to call it, but I think you know what I mean, about actually sort of teaching them. So how do you deal, not necessarily how do you deal with coronavirus, but how do you deal with things when actually there's, you know, everything seems to be sort of going against you, not going your own way, and actually what do you do and how do you cope with that? And it's really tough, you know. Sometimes when things aren't going your way, it's really, really hard. And, you know, I mean, I've had 3 periods in my life when I've been absolutely at the bottom of that kind of Kubler-Ross curve and felt absolutely shocking and come out the other side. I mean, I did a LinkedIn LinkedIn post the day that I was going to go and start going into counselling. Why did I do it? My personal coach thinks I'm absolutely off Morocco and I shouldn't have done it, or he did at the time. A few other people have said it'd be a great thing to do. For me, it's just about helping other people to learn. But you can be as successful as you want, and you know, I want everybody to be successful. I genuinely do. But I do truly believe that if you haven't also known failure, how do you ultimately know what success looks like, and how do you actually appreciate it? Because if that is just the norm, if you're I don't know, if you're a tennis player and you always win, how does that fit? How do you know how it should feel if you've never lost a match and you know what that feels like to lose? Does it have the same sense of value and the same sense of worth winning if you always win?
Yeah, it's funny, and I get that because I've noticed there with people with fire in their belly, it's almost, it seems, the more spectacularly they failed, the higher the place they've reached now, because they've sort of gone, I am never going back to that point again. I know how bad it can be. I know how dark it is. And, you know, it's interesting. So I've had a few people that sort of go, listen, my story is kind of sunshine and roses, but they've also succeeded. So I find it interesting. They don't have the same ammunition dump to stand on and go, yeah, we need to sort of shoot for the sky here.
Yeah, massively. It's, I mean, I've had a few. I mean, I had one last year. We had a project that looks like an amazing case study when you look at our website, and it does look really good. It looks absolutely, it's totally different buildings when we started. But every time we put the paint on the walls, it kept coming off, and there was a problem with the underlying coating there was a plastic-based paint that had been applied to this building. It didn't matter what you did with it, what prep you did. As soon as you put any paint on the wall, the moisture in the actual paint itself banged the paint off the surface, and it was a nightmare. And I stood on the roof and I cried. Did you not? I stood on the scaffold and these tuning stacks were about 3 meters off the finished roof level. They were enormous. And I cried. I was like, this job is just going to absolutely be the death of me. What do I do? And, you know, I sort of spent about 20 minutes, gave myself a right seriously good talking to. Looked at a couple of bits of rope on a gym wheel and thought, you've got two choices, boy. You either get on with it or you go home. What are you going to do? And I just had to get on with it. And we went for about 7 different methods. We got manufacturers involved. We sort of worked with people that I'd got wrapped around me, and we came up with a solution. And you know what? The building looks absolutely awesome now. The client loves it, thinks it looks great. It's really going to stand the test of sort of probably 2 cyclical cycles at least, if not more. But yeah, the middle of last summer, when we'd had sort of 6 weeks of glorious sunshine and we couldn't get a technical solution, so we couldn't progress. And then we had 3 weeks of rain, and it was like, right, we've got the solution now, but we can't get on with it because it's pouring with rain. And it was like, yeah, there's liquidated damages. The scaffold's costing more money. I was like, do you know what? This is really testing my metal here. But that's contracting, and you know, it's what I love about it.
It is funny at those points when it's almost that tipping point when you kind of go on, I've bottomed out. That's it. But it's at that point you get that flash of inspiration that actually it's a really creative spot. I mean, it's bloody awful that you have to go through that, but ultimately the solution often is amazing.
Yeah, I've been through it a few times. I mean, I when I first left school, I did a little while at John Lang's on a management training program, and then decided that probably, I can't remember, I guess like 18 or 20, that I knew it all and that I should get promoted and I should be the next contracts manager. And pretty quickly worked out I wasn't going to be, and I didn't at that point. I hadn't read Ryan Holiday, and I didn't know what stoicism meant. So I didn't realise that ego was the enemy. I was Mr. like 16, 18-year-old thinking I own the world. So I left and went on the tools for quite a while, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I've still got a tremendous passion for being on the tools now. I still try and spend a couple of days a month, or at least 1 day a month out on the tools, because it keeps me close to it. And actually, I learn an awful lot from that, actually. Not about actually the trade, but it's really, really good at keeping you grounded and making sure that when you're sort of making sort of estimating decisions on commercials, actually, that all of those lessons are still very much there in the front of your mind. So I enjoyed doing it. But then when I was putting myself through college, I then went to work at a contracting business in Hertfordshire, where I spent one period of sort of 11 odd years, and then went back for another period of sort of 4 or 5 years. And I went from being site manager to operations manager and ultimately director over the course of 7 years, I think. And then I was there in a senior management position for quite some time. And it was there was a culture. And there's 2 ways to describe this. And on the basis that you probably haven't got a Kevin Wilson license for explicit language, I will call it the hero to zero culture. And for quite some time, we were doing extremely well. You know, we've done an awful lot of public sector work. We were making some very healthy margins. And I was not quite hero, but I was highly thought of. But the thing is, when that happens, at some point, it switches. And it switched. And I spent probably about 4 months in a not good place. And I resigned. I did my end of year audit, pre-account audit. I prepared all my audit files so that absolutely everything was whiter than white. Every piece of documentation was there to back all the jobs up. Did that, went through that, passed with sort of flying colours, pre-audit inspection with the auditors. And I resigned. And I spent 3 days on sofa crying, because I was absolutely at my lowest point. You know, it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how much profit we made. It didn't matter whether we got 100 out of 100 on every customer care call. My face didn't fit anymore. And that was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to deal with. Probably one of the 10 most difficult things I've had to deal with. And I learned a lot from that. I learned an awful lot from it. So yeah, I've had some periods of absolute highs of kind of big business success and like all the euphoria and real big success stories and the winning awards. And then at the other end, I've also known actually what it is like to stand on the roof of a building thinking, oh my God, what have we done here? This is just an absolute nightmare. Despite having the best set of subcontractors, you know, all of the right technical information. At times, when everything is up against you, it does carry a weight, place a weight on anybody that's in, whether they're a project manager, whether they're a contracts manager, you know, people in commercial roles. You know, if you love and you've got a real passion and you're really invested in what you do, but you do carry that weight on your shoulders, without a doubt.
It's always the way. I mean, it's amazing when people are passionate about what they do, but as you say, you get that, you get the high and the low. You know, it's not like just turning up for work and going, yeah, it's a paycheck. It's not even a paycheck quite often at that point. It's not worth the price, even if it is a paycheck, you know.
Yeah, I think everything comes at a price. The difficulty I have is that, and it's something that I'm extremely grateful for. And this is kind of going to sound a bit weird, and I think the right word is oxymoronic, but I might be wrong. So you can edit that bit out if I am, please. But someone said to me, and I've actually on more than one occasion, that it must be great to absolutely, genuinely, passionately love what you do. And my answer to that is always the same. It's yes, it is. You know, I don't actually feel like I'm at work when I'm at work because I love what I do. You know, I've been out this morning. I've been and filmed one job with a drone, so I got to play around with our drone this morning. I've been to another site and met a client that I did over £1.5 million worth of work with 2 or 3 years ago that's got a problem. He's had 3 separate contractors, can't give him a solution. So he rang me and said, look, I know you don't work in the commercial world, but will you just come and have a look at this building? And I spent an hour on site with him and we've given him a solution that he's over the moon with. It's going to save him a fortune. So it doesn't feel like work, and that's great because it's really enjoyable. But the difficulty that comes with that is it's really hard to switch off because it's so enjoyable that you just want to do more of it. And that can be hard, and that does make it hard to kind of find and to determine the kind of like work-life balance that, you know, everybody bangs on about and everybody's so desperate to crave. I mean, I'm quite often out on a Sunday morning in London at 5 o'clock in the morning, measuring buildings and filming buildings because it's quiet, there's less traffic, there's less hassle. But yeah, on a Wednesday afternoon, I might go out for lunch with my wife for 3 or 4 hours. It's kind of trying to find what that work-life balance looks like. But when you do genuinely love what you do, it does make it difficult. So yes, it's great, and yes, it is amazing. But it does give you other challenges that you then need to be really, really conscious of, because if you don't, you can very easily just become job pissed and just spend all your time working, which, you know, I have done in the past. And it is an ongoing struggle every day. I'm like, well, I know I need to do that. And that almost has to come first because, you know, other people are relying on that. Clients are relying on us to deliver solutions. Subcontractors are relying on us for work. Staff are relying on us. So yeah, it does make it can make it challenging at times.
And it's always interesting when people are so, you know, get so much out of their work and, you know, means so much to them. You know, is there an element though of almost not quite a pleaser gene, but it's almost, there's an emotional payment or there's an emotional charge by achieving something, by seeing the results, or by finding a solution for people?
Yeah, massively. I like helping people. And whether that help looks like, that help can look like lots of things. So I'll give you 3 examples. That help can look like the day that I did my episode about going to the counsellor, 3 people reached out to me within 40 minutes. 2 people were like, oh my God, I'm actually really identified with what you've said. I'm going to do something about it. And somebody else wanted me to talk to them on the phone. And I ended up signposting them to go and get some help. And I've stayed in touch with that person and they've now done that. So for me, it's kind of, sometimes it can be at that level, at one-to-one, that real kind of personal, emotional help and support. At another level, it can be about helping somebody with a business objective. So having just a different set of eyes, or as Paul Mort would say, a different filter, you know, because everybody has their own sort of view of something. And sometimes to actually get somebody to sort of stand back, to stand back and actually see it from a different point of view can be really helpful. And sometimes it's about actually helping somebody who's got a problem or a challenge with their building that they want bringing back into the condition that they want it to be, and it needs to be preserved. And that can be, that could be a new roof, that could be some new windows, that could be external repairs and decorations. It might be upgrading a communal space to make it more fit for the type of building that it is. I mean, we're seeing quite a few of those types of jobs at the moment where people have converted office buildings into resi, and the common parts and the external areas have not really been touched. So it's about getting it back to being a kind of a nice kind of residential environment. And it's about safety and actually replacing sort of damage that's been done to a building, to the passive fire systems and stuff, and actually making the building to be safe and habitable for people to live in their homes, so that they can feel safe when they go to bed at night. So they're helping people, and that emotional pleasing can take on lots and lots of different guises. And somebody once said to my wife, actually, that she's got this real sort of desire to fix people with sticking plasters. And I think actually it's one thing that we've probably got in common, is actually helping other people by giving people first aid. And whether that's first aid by fixing their building, first aid by helping them with a health issue they might be suffering with, their mental health, or whether it's business first aid by looking at a problem or a challenge they've got, or giving them some support with something they're struggling with. I think, there's a massive amount of it is actually a form of emotional pleasing crossed with kind of a little bit of first aid.
I mean, is it something that you had in your life and you've replicated, or is it something you haven't had in your life, or where does this come from?
Where does it come from? I had a really good friend when I was probably 17, 18. I shared a house with him. And I've never talked about this apart from to one coach. He committed suicide, and on the day that he committed suicide, I'd got I think it was 42 unanswered calls. It was how Cellnet used to describe them, on my phone, and I never got the chance to speak to him. And I don't know whether anything I could have said might have changed the outcome that day. But I know I felt pretty awful for an awful long time about missing the opportunity to potentially be able to help someone. And I think subconsciously, probably ever since then, that's been a part of my why, is that I've wanted to do that, to never miss another opportunity to help somebody if I can.
Makes sense. It's obviously something you've had to work through.
Yeah, and still work through. I still think, I still think about it. Still think about it every day. I don't have the same sense of guilt. I've talked about it a lot with different people. Excuse me, it's come up quite often in therapy. But yeah, I've reframed it and done a lot of work around it. And yeah, it was a tough time, really tough.
I'm quite struck at how open and vulnerable you are.
You're what? Sorry, quite.
I'm struck in a positive way at how open and vulnerable you are in terms of mental health counselling. It's refreshing. Yeah,
do you know, it's quite funny. Well, not funny is the right word, but it was quite apt. Maybe I was talking to somebody on a Zoom call last week who I won't name, but he will know who he is if he does listen to this, which I suspect that he probably might. And we became acquaintances solely around the subject of mental health. He made one comment on a post that I did, and it wasn't even about, it was nothing to do with mental health, which I do talk about quite a lot in my social media stuff. And I always will. I'm not afraid to talk about it. It's not a dirty word. It's something that, until it's seen on the same level as I've got a problem with my mental health as I broke my leg, we've still got work to do. And I do firmly believe that. But he made a really interesting point, and he said that it's okay for you to talk about stuff because you don't really have anyone to answer to. You're your own boss. It's your own company. You don't have bosses. You don't have a company brand guideline to toe the line to, and you don't have a board or shareholders that will say, well, hold on a minute, what you're talking about really doesn't fit with how we want to be perceived. Would you, in the previous directorships and senior management roles, would you have been able to talk about that? And the answer is no. No, I wouldn't. And I think that's probably why. And I'd not thought about this, but my wife actually said to me a while ago, I think you're actually pretty unemployable. And I took it as a little bit of a slant to start with, but actually I think there's some truth in that, which most of what she says is right, actually. And she's pretty good at getting under my skin and knowing where I'm at. I haven't always been vulnerable. I had a really, really good mentor at Kenyans when I was there for a long time. And it was always that you need to look at risk, and you need to manage risk, and you need to be strong, strong of mind, strong of character. So to me, the very idea of being vulnerable was like, whoa, I don't want to be doing that. That's the exact opposite of what I should be. But I've also worked with some really amazing other senior management people in other businesses who taught me that actually it is okay to be vulnerable, and actually when you're leading teams and working with people, actually you need to be able to be vulnerable. And actually that led me on to sort of researching into that part of the world and looking at the works of different people. And one of the people whose work that I stumbled across was Brené Brown, an American lady who's done an awful lot of work on vulnerability, shame, and lots of work in that arena. And her work is just fascinating. And she's got probably one of my favourite podcasts ever. I mean, her TED Talk is just like awesome. And when I go down to one of the community schemes that I do some mentoring at and talks in London, I always listen. I've got a bit of a ritual that I always go on the train and I always listen to her two TED Talks on the way, just to kind of reset myself back to the point that where I need to be. So I'm not thinking about an estimate or a tender. But if you want anybody to talk to you openly and to invest emotionally in having a conversation with you about anything, they need to feel safe, and they need to feel that they're not going to be ridiculed, or you're not going to be really quick to judge, or you're going to listen to actually understand what that person wants to talk about, versus what most people in the sort of the developed world seem to do, which is to just listen to respond. People don't listen to actually understand what the person's trying to talk about. They listen because they're already formulating what needs to come straight back out of their mouth. So for me, vulnerability is about actually trying to just show people that it's okay to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. And actually, if you think about it, we're all business. We're all in business at some level or not, and the world is moving on, and the world is changing, and things are changing. Things are being innovated. Well, for people to actually want to be in the position and in the headspace to come up with creative ideas and to innovate, they've got to feel safe to be able to share those ideas. Because if it's just an idea that exists in their head because they don't feel comfortable sharing it, we're never ever going to progress. Well, in order for people to be able to articulate what those ideas are they've got, that might actually be the next light bulb or the next inside toilet or the next Dyson Hoover, they've got to feel safe to be able to share that. And the way to build that is to get people to have some trust. And the way to do that is actually to show a little bit of empathy, a bit of vulnerability. And actually then that's when you can really start unpacking the magic in some of the ideas that people have got. So it was quite a steep learning curve for me. I have no problem doing it now. I don't mind. And I think probably part of it is I don't have a fear, for the most part, of being judged. I've had people say some stupid stuff to a social media post, but do you know what? For the most part, normally they get the answer straight back. Thanks ever so much. That's 10 logs you've just given me to put on my fire. Do you want me to send you a picture of me sitting in front of it? Because I just think, you know what, life's too short.
Yeah. What does fuel you? I mean, what is it? Is it the positive side or is it negative, or what?
What fuels me? I think a few things. And I don't want to sound really trite and really helping people massively, helping people fulfill their potential. I've got, I think, 4 handwritten letters that are probably among my most treasured possessions. It's not cars, it's not houses, it's things like that. And one of those letters is from somebody that I mentored 10 years ago, I think. He was a year one business apprentice, wanted to sort of get a bit of an understanding of commercials and that kind of thing. And he's now commercial manager at a big main contractor. And he sent me this lovely, and I had no idea what this was. He sent me this parcel. My wife phoned me and said, "You've got a parcel at home." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll open it when I get home." And I opened it, and it was this lovely mahogany box. And in this box was a handwritten note and a bottle of aftershave. And it was, I'd never heard of this brand of, and I like my aftershave, you know, but I'd never heard of this brand of aftershave. And it was this lovely 2-page handwritten note about how this guy had sort of taken the time that I'd spent with him, and used that and some of the stuff that he'd achieved in like the last couple of years and where he was at now, and some of the big things that he talked about as being massive kind of over the horizon goals he'd actually achieved. And he sent me this lovely handwritten note with this bottle of extremely expensive aftershave to say thank you for the time that I'd invested in him. So for me, it's about helping people fulfill their potential. So that can be all sorts of stuff. That can be spending time with my children, doing stuff with them, helping them become, you know, a better skateboarder or scooter rider, or a better basketball player, or a better pogo stick jumper, or a better mathematician. Spending time with my wife on the business that she successfully sort of transferred into after spending 15 years in the police, in setting that up and helping her with some of the challenges she's faced with that. Helping some of the people that are new to the block management industry by giving them my time, and talking to them about major works and the kind of the things to do and the things not to do. So helping other people to fulfill their potential, I would say. Now, whether that comes from the positive experience I've had in life or the negative, I don't really know the honest answer to that.
Are you fulfilling your potential?
Am I fulfilling my potential? I'm fulfilling the amount of potential that I'm aware I have today, but I am also spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money on coaching and my own personal development to stretch and unpack that potential to see how much more I have. So the honest answer is, I'm fulfilling what I have, what I'm aware of right now, but I'm also working on some massive, massive stretched, big hairy ass goals for the next 10 and 20 years, because I do believe that it doesn't matter. If you write something down and set it as a goal, you'll find a way to work towards it. And that's the way that I'm trying to maximize and fulfill the potential that I've got right now. I mean, some of the stuff that I've done in the last year, I never would have thought I would have done 5 years ago. I haven't spoken to him for a couple of weeks, actually. I've got an overdue call with him, but the guy that started off my personal coaching journey, Andy Rivers, who's an amazing guy, amazing personal coach, is really highly skilled, does all sorts of stuff, including hostage negotiation at really high level, all manner of different stuff. He even delivers people supermarket shopping during lockdown. That's diversification for you. But he quite frequently says, just stop and look back at where you were 2.5 years ago. And when I do that, I think, wow. But it just fuels me on, because if I can achieve that in that short space of time, what size legacy can I leave in the next 50 years? Because I'm not going out quietly. I'm going out on the G of the bang. I start every day on the B of the bang, and I'm going out in a box on the G of the bang, because I want to build the biggest possible legacy that I can.
Why?
Why? To help people that are not in a position to access that help through traditional routes, because not everybody knows what help is out there. Not everybody knows what they need to do to be successful. I had a really amazing conversation with a guy at Youth Build a couple of times ago, after doing the initial kind of opening speech and discussion about my career role. They do like a speed networking event where I get to spend sort of 2 or 3 minutes with the 3 other people that are there as mentees, talking to people on a one-to-one. And I was talking to a young lad there, and he was saying, "It's all right for you. You're white. You're middle class. I'm sure you had money to set up a business on your own. I haven't got money, and I haven't got like family that can help me." And I said to him, "It's really simple. I set my business up with £1. I didn't borrow money from anywhere. I didn't want or need or have any help. I set it up and I did it on my own." He was like, "Well, how?" And I sat down and for 15 minutes said, "Look, what is your idea?" And I'm not going to go into details because what he's doing is very, very clever, and he will be extremely successful, and it will make him a lot of money. But within 15 minutes, the core idea is there. There are some bits that need developing around it to make it scalable quickly. But the core business model, we sat and put together in 15 minutes. And he was absolutely blown away that actually any of that was achievable just by looking at what you buy at, what you sell at, what do you need in terms of credit, what do you need in terms of actually moving that forward, what people do you need wrapped around you, what bits do you need to protect, what bits of it do you need to market, how are you going to market it, what's the target audience, what's the route to market, where do those people make their buying decisions from? And all of a sudden he was like, you literally just saw his eyes just go and get wider and wider and wider. And I know, because I've spoken to 2 people since, that he's working on putting that together as a plan to move that forward to execution. That for me is absolutely electrifying.
It's amazing.
And that's why I love doing it, because it's actually, you know, I was talking to a guy who commented on one of my posts earlier on, actually, and, you know, coaching and mentoring people is not about giving them the answers. It's about asking them the questions to find the answers within themselves, but giving them some guidance. And it's a bit like being the sat nav almost. You're not actually saying, where do you want to go? Because they've got to tell you where the destination is. What you're doing is you're giving them the waypoints along the way. And when they go off track a little bit, you're there to help them actually get back on track again.
Where do you tend to lean in terms of, are you motivated more by positive opportunities or away from pain and fear? Where's your balance?
Wow, that's a deep question. I don't like fear, certainly, but I'm more comfortable with fear than ever I was. Setting up on my own 18 months ago was a massive step out of my comfort zone, and the ultimate of me backing myself. And if I'm honest, I don't think I've been back in my comfort zone ever since I did that. It's almost like it's a distant memory. It's like that was in sort of Exeter, and I'm now near Manchester, which for the UK audience, they'll probably sort of work that out. But anybody that's further afield might struggle. So it is, yeah, it's kind of probably half an eye on the fear, but the rest of it is by opportunity, the size, scale, and the number of opportunities that exist out there for people that want to actually put their shoulder to the wheel and get on with it and actually seize those opportunities and turn them into something positive. So I'd say it's probably 85% that, and maybe 15% on fear of some of the stuff, because I don't think one of my coaches talks a lot about sort of replaying movies of old events that have gone on in your life and actually how they can like not serve you and not be helpful. And I get that. And I do really, really fully subscribe to that. But I would be lying if I said I don't ever just have a little cheeky kind of like 30-second sort of dive into them occasionally, because I think it just keeps me a bit grounded, keeps me a bit sort of balanced. And I think they're just as a good tool to revisit on occasion. Are they the millstone that once they were? No, they're not, most definitely. But I think only a fool would actually jettison that baggage off permanently, to the point that you no longer even were aware that it happened, because those lessons are there for a reason. You know, it's a bit like the saying about the teacher comes along when you're ready to listen and when you're ready to learn. Well, those lessons were there to teach you a lesson at the point you needed to be taught a lesson. So to sort of cast that aside and forget about it, I think probably would be a little foolhardy.
I'm curious as well because you mentioned that you have multiple mentors, and is that for different sectors or different parts, or what way do you balance that in your
So,
head?
do you know, it's really funny actually, because my contracts manager said that to me the other day. He was like, what would you do if Stevie said this and John said that? He said, what would you do? I said, well, it's really simple. I said, I'd do what I always do, and that is that I would take on board what one mentor says and what the other mentor says, and I would unpack that, think about each of that, and then I would do what I feel is the right thing to do based on all of that experience. And he was like, but how does that play out in real? Because I'm not sure I understand how that would work. And the example that I can give is that when I decided that I would get some benefit from going to see a counsellor, I thought about it an awful lot, and I mean for probably 3 months. Not constantly, but certainly repeatedly and quite a lot, probably 3-4 times a week. And I kind of thought about, what do I want to get out of this? Where is it going to take me? What sort of things do I want to talk about? And some of those questions were easy to answer. Some of them weren't. And sometimes when I would go back to that same question again, I would come up with a different answer than I'd thought about the time before. And the way that I described it to Dave was that once I'd decided that that was what I was going to do, I was going to go and see a counsellor. What I wanted was that if it could help me, then I'm not the only person that's running a business that's got a few struggles and thinking, am I doing the right thing, or is this right, or it's had a few issues in the past that they might have struggled to deal with. And if I could actually document that, and if I could talk about that, and it helped one person, then that's worth putting my ego to the side and doing that for. And when I thought about it, and I was like, are you fucking sure? Are you really rich? Really? Is this really what you want to be doing? And one of them, I'm in a mentoring mastermind group. I'm in a few, but I'm in one that's based over in Ireland. And at the last quarterly summit, we were having this discussion about my reverse business model, which was I was never going to employ anyone. And they said, look, your first year's numbers are brilliant. Your customer feedback is absolutely mind blowing. Why would you not grow and scale this? I was like, because I'm not sure I want to put my head above the parapet. And they were like, look, you can't be a secret and a success. So you either piss or get off the pot. You've got to do one or the other. So I was like, okay. So they sort of not challenged me, but suggested that I might want to do it. And the way that I sort of decided I was going to do it was to put myself out there and do a bit more video content. So I took that and thought, well, if I can use that sort of experience about doing a video about where I'm at with my mental health, and it helps one person, then actually that's actually done some good. So I would have got some therapy out of it. So I'll probably be in a better place. But if I've helped a person as well, then that's kind of like a double whammy. And Rob Moore's got this big thing about life leverage and leveraging using your time as efficiently as possible. And I'm not rambling, I'm getting to the point, but I'll come back to it. And ever since I got diagnosed with a disease called ulcerative colitis, I've kind of been more aware of where I sort of put my life energy. So I decided I was going to do a video about the fact I was going to go and see a counsellor. So I recorded this video, and I did it the night before, and I sent it to my personal coach. I said to him, Andy, listen to this, see what you think. Does it get the message across? And he listened to it. He rang me and he said, you're off your head. What are you doing? You can't put that on social media. You'll get absolutely fucking buried. Why would you want to tell everybody you're going to see a counsellor? You're mad. Don't do it. Just don't. Change the password on your account. Don't do it. So it's like, great, that wasn't what I wanted to hear. But I do really appreciate your opinion. So I sent it to the lady who does our corporate-y kind of, I mean, we're an SME, we're not corporate, but she does some of our more staid, more planned social media posts. And she said to me that if you've got the kahunas to do this, it will be massive. You could help so many people because nobody's got the balls to stand up and talk about this like you do. So I was like, okay, that's one all. And then I thought, well, I wouldn't want my son, who's nearly 16, to somehow get wind of what I've done because social media is, I had no thoughts that this is going to go viral. The only thing that's going to go viral is me getting a cold. But what I didn't want was for some smart ass to link this to him, and then for him to get trolled or any kind of negative feedback. So I rang him, because he lives with my ex-wife, and said to him that this is what I'm going to do. And he broke down in tears and he said, Dad, I'm so proud of you. What an amazing thing to do. And I'm getting choked up now talking about it. And for me, I was done then. When he said that, that for me was enough. And then my dad is retired, but he's quite highly regarded in construction. And he's worked in different places around the world. And we've got, our paths never cross with him at work at all, but we do have a couple of shared connections. And again, for the same reason, I wouldn't have wanted them to know or to find out via social media that I've got a few challenges that I've not spoken to anyone about. So I rang my parents, and my mum said to me, look, your dad's on a conference call to Canada, but please don't do it. Clients are not going to want to work with you. You're going to just bankrupt your business. It's just going to be that. It's not the good thing to do. So I was like, okay. So, and my family don't talk about, they don't even put the words mental and health together. It's like, you feeling all right? That's it. It's like, just don't talk about that sort of stuff. It's a bit like not mentioning the war. So I was like, okay. So I sort of counselled all these people's opinion. And I was like, right, what do I do? So I sat in the office at home. And I thought, and I just gave myself a real talking to. I said, look, you know what you've got to do. You've got to grow a pair of bollocks and you've got to do it. You've got to do what you think is right. And you know in your heart what's right. And that is to put that video out there. And that's the example that I use today, is that having different mentors doesn't mean, is brilliant, because you get different opinions, but it doesn't mean you just take what that person says and you go and apply it to your business, because that's not how it works. You need to take the stuff you talk about and you need to think about it, and you need to think about how you might practically apply it to your business if it fits with your business. Because me and you could sit in the same brand and marketing mastermind together at Progressive, and we could listen to Rob Moore talk about something that would work amazingly for marketing your podcast, but it wouldn't work for me trying to sell external repairs and decorations to block managers. But that doesn't mean to say that that advice is good, bad, or indifferent. What it means is that we each need to respectively work out how that would apply. And sometimes I do get different stuff. Some people think that you should have your profile on LinkedIn one way. Other people have got different opinions for how that should be. Other people are have more sales energy. Other people have more of a tendency to want to sort of go in for the hard sell. I did an amazing piece of work over the course of, I think it was 9 or 12 weeks, with a lady from Milton Keynes called Jules White, about actually the unique human proposition and how you actually talk to people, and how you actually talk about actually helping people with finding their solution without actually selling at all. And if people actually want to work with you, they'll want to work with you. If they don't, then that's equally fine. And that's the same approach that I take, you know. And somebody said to me the other day, "You're really arrogant." I was like, okay, what please explain. And they said, well, in a LinkedIn post ages ago, you said that they could book a discovery call and see whether you're the right fit to work together. That's really arrogant. They're a customer. You should want to work with them. And I said, well, okay, that's your opinion. That's fine. I said, but just because somebody rocks up at the door with a sign saying customer doesn't mean that I want to work with them. If their values aren't aligned with my values, why would I want to work with that person? Right? But they're a customer. Yeah, but that isn't the be all and end all of that story. Actually, if that person doesn't, if you don't like how that person's going to behave, or how that person's going to treat you, or how that person might treat their staff, or how that person might treat their residents, why would you want to work with them? Well, I wouldn't. So I don't actually see that as being arrogant, in the same way that clients would want to qualify that we're the right size contractor and we deliver the right type of work for the project they have in mind. Equally, I have the right to actually say, well, would I want to work with that business or not? I mean, I did a presentation as part of a group of 4 of us at the National Housing Maintenance Forum in 2018 at the NEC, and that was like 2-hour presentation all about picking the right contractor. And there's a world of difference between a contractor that is going to go and build the Shard, or is going to go and build the M1, or is going to go and do the external repairs and decorations on your block, or is going to come and build you a biomass plant in Northern Ireland, or he's going to go and build a runway in Perth. And yes, there are national contractors and global contractors that will tell you they'll do all those solutions, and they might. But is that the best answer? No. The best answer is to get the right person that's going to deliver that type of work. Well, in the same way, I want to work with clients that want to work and behave in a certain manner. And I'm perfectly entitled to do that.
I think it's such a good point, and that most companies only need 1, 10, 100 clients. They don't need, 57 million people or something, 56 million people in the UK and Northern Ireland. So people go, yeah, everyone's a customer. It's like, well, not necessarily. You don't need everyone. In fact, you need sort of 0.1 or 0.001% of the population to work with. So, because it feels at the moment everyone's trying to be PC, they're trying to be all-inclusive and all the rest, and yet they lose their style, they water it all down to appeal to everyone, but yet, they sort of have a passion with no one because they're sort of uni-flavored.
Yeah, it's almost like putting what my mum used to say, putting a kettle full of hot water in a bath full of cold. It's just bland. It doesn't do anything. You're not ever going to achieve anything. And I mean, that's one of the lessons I learned was actually that, when I worked at Kenyans, we used to do all manner of different types of work, and we had different people marketing different types of work to different people, and it was a real struggle. And that was one of the reasons when I set the business up, I was like, no, I want to concentrate on the type of work that we like doing, that we enjoy doing, that's really rewarding, not just for the soul, but profitably, so that you get the right balance between the two, and you can actually make a difference, not just be any kind. I mean, Rock did it, the nation's local builder. They'd do literally anything from a development site at 20 million to putting a bloke in a van to travel 2 hours for a tap washer for a tenner. Well, look what happened to them. It's I don't know whether it's PC. I think it's more that people are actually increasingly scared to say no because they don't realise that actually it's okay to say no. I mean, I spoke to someone last week, and it's someone I've done a couple of jobs for before, because I used to do quite a lot of new build stuff, and they're still in that arena, and obviously I'm not. And they said, look, I've moved. I'm working for this other business now, and we've got this piece of work. It's £2.5 million roughly. We'd really like to work with you. And I said, that's really great. I said, but that's not what I'm about. That's not what I do. What I can do is I can signpost you to a couple of other people that will actually deliver that for you, but that's not what I'm about. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I think they said. That's really interesting. I was like, okay, I can take that anyway. But do you know what? They followed up with the people that I signposted them to, and actually they've done a deal with one of them, so they've got a good happy outcome. They've got the happy ending, which is good. But I had the same conversation with somebody at a pre-contract or a post-tender interview a few weeks ago. And they said, oh, well, we want to do this job during the summer. I was like, yeah, okay. And at the time, it was like I think it was 6 weeks until the summer holidays. And they said, but our concern is that obviously this project is going to clash with the school summer holidays. And I said, but you're not near a school. Because quite often we do jobs where blocks are next to a school and we have to have oversailing agreements to put scaffold across playgrounds and stuff, which is, it's achievable. We can do it. It's not a problem. It just takes a bit of communication. And they said, no, I don't think you understand. I said, what do you mean? Sorry. I think it's you that you're asking me about a school, but there isn't a school. And they said, well, what are you going to do when all the school work happens in the summer and you take all your labour off? When we're going to be really disgruntled. Well, it won't happen. They said, no. Listen, we've had contractors before. We know how it works. We had a job 5 years ago when we had it done last time, and that's what happened in the summer. I said, well, I can tell you it won't happen for two reasons. Because that says stone and I'm stone, so it's my business. So I know what happens in my business, and we don't do schoolwork. So we won't be taking all the labour off a job to put it on school because we don't do schoolwork. It's that simple. And the guy was like, really? I said, yeah. And the contract administrator, because that was the like, director of the RTM, and the contract administrator who put us forward for the job said, that's why we like working with him, because we don't have 4 layers of middle management that just tell us what we want to hear. That's come straight out of the owner's mouth. We know exactly what the situation is. It's not dressed up. There's not 10,000 words. It's one sentence, and you know exactly where you stand. And they're like, okay, when can we start? So it's kind of, you just got to be upfront and honest with people. But it's learning the power of no. I mean, I haven't read it, but there is actually a book called The Power of No, because sometimes you need to say no. I mean, I've had it with a couple of clients where, you know, I wouldn't say we've been treated badly, because I think there's a lot of people out there who've been treated a lot worse. But we had some invoices that were paid late. There were some jobs where we helped them out, and really, really pushed the boat out to help them out, you know, doing sort of tens of thousands of pounds of work, not at risk, but without necessarily the right amount of documentation because of the speed that the job evolved at. And we would never be one to put the commercials before actually getting the job done. And then lo and behold, when the next phase of work came out, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to competitively tender this. And actually, when we priced it and we were second by about 300 quid on a 50 grand job, they were like, no, we're going with the other contractor. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But clearly there's not any value in our relationship, is there? Because, you know, when you phone up at 10 o'clock at night and say, I've got a problem with a roof, can you come and help us out? I don't say, well, what, have you not phoned them first? No, we mobilise and we get it done for you. When you've got a problem, you say, do us a favour, can you come and film this roof with your drone because we don't know where we need to put a scaffold to sort out a roof leak. We don't say, well, send us an order and when we get it, we'll come and do it. And I think it's, you know, clients are quick enough to kick a contractor when they don't perform. But equally, I think it's only right that as a business, you've got to actually do a bit of a kind of, almost like a bit of a sort of a well-managed check on actually your business to say, are these clients actually serving my business? I mean, I've got a guy in one of my mentoring groups who was an accountant, and he actually fired off 65, 70% of his clients. Went for a bit of a restructure in terms of the headcount in his office that he needed. He's now got, I think he's now down to having about 10% of the clients that he had, a reduced headcount, but his profit has gone up about 550%. Because he's not dealing with the kind of, and it's the whole 80-20 thing, you know, 80% of your clients or 20% of those clients cause 80% of the headaches. Well, if you get rid of them, you get rid of most of the headaches, you don't need the amount of resources. Actually, all of a sudden, your business looks very, very different very quickly.
It is amazing having the confidence and clarity to do that. That takes, what does it take? It takes bravery, but it takes vision too. I don't know, it's wisdom or vision or what to again, the power of no, but also just being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I think it's being comfortable in your own skin. I think it's very much it's about having a good network around you. It's about to a degree, I think it's about also finding your tribe. And you're probably going to say, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, you know, everybody's got family. Everybody's got an immediate family. Everybody's, for the most part, got an extended family. Everybody's got some mates. I mean, everybody's got mates down the pub generally. But not that many people have actually got a tribe of people that are on the same business wavelength as them. And that's one of the things that I massively get out of being in business masterminds is actually, it's not just the events on the day. It's kind of and everybody hates WhatsApp groups, but the value in some of those groups is absolutely exponential in terms of like other people's shared experiences, chatting ideas through and discussing different ways of doing stuff. And actually, I find it really, really beneficial and really helpful because having balls of steel is one thing, but actually having a network of people that are at the same point on their journey as you are, almost like as a bit, not necessarily just a sounding board, but you know, they're almost like a bit like virtual cheerleaders. They've got your back. That is really, really beneficial and really powerful.
think to be able to call your bluff too, or push you when you're ready.
Yeah. And that it works both ways, because they're almost kind of like virtual cheerleaders, but they're also really good at calling that bullshit.
Mm.
And we do it quite often. You see someone and they'll come out of a load of claptrap about, well, I haven't quite done this well. How are you getting on my book? Well, I've got a title. Or, well, yeah, I've written 1,000 words. Really? But you said 3 months ago you can do it. Why don't you do it? Oh, well, I've been busy. I thought about moving house, but I didn't. And that's one of the massive benefits from like the whole mentoring, coaching, masterminding stuff, is the amount of accountability. And if I almost can't believe I'm sitting here saying this, because 5 years ago I had a conversation with a guy who'd gone off. We used to work together. We were both in part of the senior management team in the business. He'd gone off and he was running a business that his father had set up and wanted to retire from. And he'd taken on a coach. And I spoke to him on the phone about something totally different. And he was saying, yeah, I've got this coach, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? I've never had a coach apart from like on a stag do. What does it mean? And he was like, yeah. I said, well, tell me, what do you get? What's the deal? You're obviously paying some money. And he said, well, she turns up once a month and we go through a list of shit that I'm meant to have done. And if I haven't done it, she tells me off. And I was like, you what? Is that seriously what you're telling me? That's what you're paying for? And he was like, and I said to him, well, I'll tell you what, I'll phone you once a month and I'll do it for half the fee. And he said, no, that's all right. She's fit. I said, Dave, you can't say that. But it was one of those conversations. So I was always really, really kind of anti the whole kind of, well, not anti, but certainly highly cynical, I would say. And it wasn't about the cost. It was not about the cost. It was just about, I didn't understand. I didn't understand the value that they could bring in actually unpacking and repacking your mind and actually making you think about actually who you are, what you want to be, where do you want to go, how far do you want to go, how do you think, how much time do you spend in what part of your brain, how much time of it are you spending on creative stuff versus sort of tangible, actual, real stuff. I've not sort of thought about any of that stuff, and that's, I think, probably where my biggest growth area has come from, is through doing all of that work with those coaches.
It is always amazing how different people can push you. But you were saying that was only, 5 years ago, you were saying?
Yeah, and for the first couple of years, didn't really do that much. Most of it's been in the last sort of, or an awful lot in the last 2 years, but certainly over the last 3 years, yeah, for the most part. I mean, if you'd have asked me so what would it be, 3 years ago in December, I was sitting at Centre Parks with my wife, and I'd committed to go on to do a public speaking event at the National Housing Forum in Birmingham, because I'd got this real fear about presenting in public. It was one of my massive fears, and the guy that I worked for at the time said to me that it was part of like a PDP, that lovely phrase that everybody loves bandying about and doesn't really do a lot with. Certainly my experience of corporate world anyway. And there was a suggestion that I'd join like a book club, like a discussion book club in a local village pub. And I think my answer to that was, I don't really think you know me too well, because that's not really me. So the next week I was at a contractor forum for the National Housing, the NHMF, like National Housing Forum. And they wanted people to do a presentation about explaining to clients about why different types of contractors fit different work streams. And it's not just a case of one size fits all. And I don't know what happened. My arm just went straight up, involuntarily just went straight up. And it was only about a week later, I said to my wife, oh my God, what have I done? I can't do this. And I had massive, and I still do get to this day, not so much, but some imposter syndrome. And I really struggled with it. So that's why I started having coaching originally, was to deal with that. And it's kind of just gone on from there, really.
It is, yeah, it's great. I mean, once, and it's kind of like the never-ending merry-go-round too. It's once you start, and you gain the value and you see the benefit, and then
yeah,
the next and the next and the next.
That's the thing. It's I mean, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that, oh, I did have a coach once, but yeah, I stopped it. I'm like, okay, what made you stop it? And they said, well, I just couldn't see the value in it. And I said, well, would you maybe try working with someone else? No, I'm not interested. That old pony don't work. Like, okay.
It takes a bit of wisdom too, is, coach and, coach, mentor, and mentee, and coachee, if that's a word. But they do, people do outgrow too, and they
Yeah.
just grow into different styles, and it's having the foresight to say that's cool. That's almost the point. And I know, like, if they're doing the job properly, their purpose is to do themselves out of a job.
Yeah, of course it is. And I mean, it's really funny because I have this discussion with people quite regularly. And I mean, a guy messaged me this morning actually on Instagram, funnily enough, and he said, "Look, I want to carry on working with you." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Where do I sign?" And I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean? Where do you sign? Sign what?" He was like, "Well, there must be a contract." There's not a contract. Why do I need to have a contract? I don't need to have a contract. It's my business. If I don't have a contract, I don't have a contract. There is no contract. No. I'd feel more comfortable if we signed a contract. I was like, okay, what do you want the contract to say? Well, I don't know. I want to keep working with you. Okay, well, I'll send you an email telling you that as long as you'll get value out of it and you keep paying, we'll carry on working together. But I'm not having a contract. We don't need a contract. Why do you want a contract? Well, because I like being locked into stuff. I said, well, most coaches and mentors will lock you into like a 12-month agreement. I said, but I don't need to do that. I said, because you know where you want to go and I know where we need to get you to. And if we do that in 3 months, brilliant. We do it in 3 months. If we do it in 12 months, which is how long at the most it will take, then we do it in 12 months. But if we do it in 3 months and you've signed a 12-month contract, what do we do for the other 9 months? Well, I'll keep paying you. I said, well, I've delivered what I agreed to deliver, but I've done it in 3 months. So why do you need to pay me for another 9 months? The time that I'm spending doing that, I could spend helping someone else, couldn't I? And he was like, and he's just messaged me actually and said, I get it now. Totally. Thank you. I'll sort it out. And I think it's a really healthy thing for people to outgrow their coaches because it's almost a sign of, do you know what? A job well done.
Mm.
So I don't get why people have an issue with it. The only thing I think is there's an awful lot of ego and there's a lot of big egos walking around the coaching world. And it's really weird because they seem to be aligned to the people that don't actually deliver for the most part, certainly based on the amount of people that seem to sort of then turn up somewhere else saying, well, I've still got the same problems. Well, actually, I've gone backwards. And there's some people out there that have done some work that hasn't necessarily helped that. But there's an awful lot of people, and for the most part, most people that are coaching and mentoring other people are doing it from a good place. You know, most of the people that I talk to that are coaching and mentoring other people actually do quite a bit of pro bono work as well. It's not all paid. And I know I do a fair bit of pro bono stuff, but I do pro bono contract claims as well, helping subcontractors that are sort of in distress and got problems getting paid by other main contractors, because I think if I can actually leverage the sort of experience and skills that I've been taught as a main contractor to help other subcontractors, why would I not want to do that? Because it's just some of the stuff that goes on is just grossly unfair and unjust, and it's just plain wrong. And I think if I can help somebody to defend themselves with the knowledge that I've got that they haven't got, I kind of feel like it's my moral duty to do that. That probably sounds really sort of grandiose and arrogant, but it's not meant to. I just like helping people. Yes, I think really is what it comes down to.
It was interesting, to ask you, what are your core values?
Honesty, integrity. So always doing the right thing, irrespective of whether anybody's looking or whether anybody can see it. It's quite funny. I had some really interesting debates around this actually, because we stripped a roof off on a building probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago now, and it was I wasn't actually meant to be on site that day. I was meant to be in a meeting sort of half an hour away, and one of the guys rang me and said, look, there's a problem with the falls on this roof, can you come and have a look? So I went down there, and when they'd stripped the roof off, there was about 6 rubble bags of crap just been dumped under this roof by the main contractor who built the building. And so we bagged it all up and took it away. And I did a post. I just took some pictures of it, or one of the guys took some pictures of it. And I actually happened to be pushing the broom, and I think that's probably why I took a picture of it, to record the fact. And I had a really interesting discussion with somebody actually about integrity, because that's probably my most highly regarded value. And the fact that it's about doing the right thing, even when no one else is looking. Because if you pay attention to the small stuff and get the small stuff right, and you act with integrity and you act honestly, and you support people, and you're prepared to show up, be dependable, be the person that actually, you know, will always be there when somebody's got a problem, but he's prepared to be honest. You know, if we make a mistake, I'll put our hands up and we'll deal with it. But we won't hide from it. We won't shy away from it. We'll deal with it. And, you know, I'm the first person to admit I haven't always got stuff right in my personal life. And I'll openly talk about it. I was in tears at Youth Build a few months ago talking about something that happened 20 years ago. I don't have a problem doing that if it encourages people to be open and honest and share what they want to talk about, and actually that makes them feel better. So I would say they're probably my strongest values, I would say.
Can you accept praise?
Wow. I didn't see that one coming. Can I accept praise? I can. I'm better accepting praise on behalf of the team than I am personally, if I'm honest. Because to be brutally honest, I don't actually feel that worthy of praise. I just feel like I just get up every day and show up and do what I was put on the earth to do. And you know, why would anybody want to praise that? I'm just doing what I'm put here to do. You know, but when the team deliver a good job, or when the guys actually provide a solution to a customer that helps them out, or we do something that we go the extra mile to help someone, I can take the praise for the business, because I think we deserve it if we do a good job and we help someone out. Or you know, I mean, when I spoke to a client today, and it was meant to just be a cup of tea and a chat about where we've been for the last couple of years and some future projects. And you know, there was a scaffold on this building that was inherently dangerous, and I was like, gave him some advice about sorting that out. And you know, it might not have fallen over, but in all likelihood, it probably would have done in the next sort of few weeks. And he was like, "That's just potentially saved someone's life. What you've just told me." Like, okay, well, it might have done, it might not. He was like, "No, thanks, mate. That's brilliant what you just done. But all I've done is just share with you some wisdom to stop you getting in a world of shit. I don't need to be praised for that. I've just done what's right." You know, it's I don't know. I mean, my wife was a police officer for 15 or for 20 years, but she was on a career break for 5 because of the way she was treated. And she's, as a police officer, and I trained to join fire brigade when I was a lot younger. And I think a lot of the blue light services and the nurses and people, you know, if there's a problem, they run towards it. Now, I'm not necessarily somebody that would run towards a fight and want to break it up, or, you know, don't get me wrong, if there was a real mismatch, then I might sort of get involved and sort it out. But I'd always try and help someone. And if I've got some knowledge that can help someone out, then undoubtedly they can have that. And you know, I don't want to be like running around charging people for it. If I can have a conversation with someone and leave them a bit better informed in 10 minutes that they can better enforce their rights, or they can stop something happening next time, then hell yeah, I'll do that. But I don't need to be praised to do it. I'm not doing it from the point of view of being praised. It's just, I suppose, I don't know. When I was in the Boy Scouts before I got kicked out, it was always drummed into me, you should leave the world a cleaner, better place than what you found it. And I think it's just stuck. But I've kind of made it work for me, if that makes sense. And that's my way of doing it.
That makes sense. What's your superpower?
What is my superpower? I don't have one. But I got asked a not dissimilar question, which I will use as my answer because it's quite poignant, it's quite important. I went to an anti-bullying workshop in London, which was absolutely brilliant, and it slips my mind who organised it, and I only wish that I could remember, because I'd love to credit them for it. And they asked the question, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? and we had I think we had 2 minutes to think about it, and I knew instantly what mine would be. And mine would be that for anybody that's ever bullied anyone to be forced that every time they go to say something, they have to listen to it 3 times before the words come out of their mouth. And they would hear the same words played back to them by somebody that's bullied them, played back to them by their mother, and played back to them by some form of religious mentor, whether that's a priest or somebody from a religion. And then they get the option, press A to carry on and say it, or press B to delete all the recordings. That would be my superpower.
Well,
because I think it would solve a lot of the problems that exist in this world today. And I think if you could apply the same to social media, I think you'd cure a lot of the crap that's going around that actually, you know, is self-inflicted. We're doing ourselves more harm through the damage that we are inflicting on one another as human beings through social media and its negative use than global warming and any kind of coronavirus can put together. It's just not so visible because it's affecting people's mental health as opposed to their physical health, and that's deplorable. You know, that as a species, as a human beings, that's what we're actually using and choosing to spend our time doing. That's just deplorable.
It's interesting because earlier on, you know, and I think I would almost potentially sort of suggest maybe a superpower of yours is listening.
You think? I'm surprised.
Just you were saying, you know, from the mentoring point of view, from working with youth, sometimes it's actually listening and properly listening, you know, which it's like, you know, you talk about doing business and doing business with doing what's right, no matter who's watching. Unfortunately, it's, you know, it's common sense that isn't that common. Unfortunately, you know, it's like a lot of those things that people just doing it with integrity. Doesn't matter who's watching, you know, listening to what someone's saying as opposed to just waiting to jump in to say what you want to say, you know, and that's, I don't know, just interesting, you know, it's... I'm
a big fan of common sense for lots of reasons, but one of the big reasons I had imposter syndrome for a long time was that I didn't ever go to university. I couldn't wait to get out of school. The only 2 reasons I went to school was because it's where the fag shop was, and I liked playing rugby with my pals. That was it. I didn't want to be there. I hated the place. Couldn't wait to get out. And for a long time, it was a bit of a bitter regret that I didn't go to uni, and I felt like maybe it had held me back. But I've had 2 or 3 different people that for over the years have actually said to me, I understand why you would feel like that, but actually if you look at what you've achieved and look at the roles that you've had and the exposure to business that you've had, you would never have learned any of that. You wouldn't have been exposed to any of that if you'd have gone down the other route, the academic route. So I think probably for now, I'm not a big fan of hiring big teams of people. We talked at the outset about outsourcing and leveraging. I mean, I'm a massive advocate for that. But if I was sitting there, and I have sat and I have done quite a lot of hiring, but I would always sit and compare people's CVs, and I would look at someone's CV, and just because they've got a university degree and a whole host of academic qualifications just proves to me that they can learn some stuff, remember it, and write it back down in the exam. It doesn't mean that they can actually deliver the job. It doesn't mean they know how to put the components of the team together and get them to actually work together and actually deliver something on time to a collective set of objectives at all, just because they know how building technology works and, you know, how organisation and procedures works. So I've always kind of had this thing about, you know, common sense and experience goes an awful long way. And the thing that I've always found with common sense is that actually it's really akin to deodorant, in that the people that need it most are the ones that don't use it. It's some of the things that people just think that's just such, and I just look at it and say, that's just common. Why would you do that? Why would you actually think? And I'll never forget, there was a guy on a project that was distressed a good few years ago now, and I won't go into too much detail, but But the project was really distressed. There was lots of challenges with it, and some of the decisions that have been made, and it was, you know, there was a conversation that had been had with a subcontractor about vertical logistics, and everyone in construction understands horizontal logistics. You know, what's the road network like? How am I going to get stuff to site? Oh, well, it's on a red route. But the one thing that quite often gets forgotten is vertical logistics. And there was a conversation about whether a crane was needed for this particular task. So they've got this guy who was a sort of a middle to senior management position, was tasked with going away and sort of coming back with an opinion on this, whether it was or not. And it was pretty bloody obvious that there was, a crane was going to be needed to get material from A to B. And he came back with the answer of no. And there must have been 14 people around this table. And I kid you not, you could have had a pin drop, the amount of chins that hit the floor and bounced back up again. Because it was patently obvious. The question wasn't really, I think the question, to be honest, was probably framed wrong. The question probably should have been, what size and for how long do you need a crane? Not what type do you need a crane at all. But the answer that came out was, no, we don't need a crane. Well, this company ended up spending over 120 grand on craneage for this job. And yet, common sense, you didn't need a university degree. You didn't even need to go and have a conversation with someone. It was just common sense said, I've got to get this from here on a lorry into this building and up to the top of the building because it's going to sit on the roof. Common sense told you you needed a crane. And all too often, stupid decisions get made because people believe someone because they've got loads and loads of education that they know the answer. And yet actually, if you'd have talked to the guy who's built 20 buildings or been delivering that trade package for 10 years and has managed teams of guys all over the world and actually understands how the building goes together, and he says, well, yeah, I would, and I'd probably want, I don't know, a 200-ton mobile to put it up, and I'd want this crane for this, and that's what I would do. And they could talk you through a method statement in 3 or 4 minutes that would perfectly articulate how they would do that job. Yeah, you need some due diligence checks done from an engineering point of view, but you'd get a far better method statement out of someone like that than you will out of some desk jockey that's got a whole wealth of degrees and education behind them, but no real world experience.
Isn't it? It is amazing how some people can just get stuck.
Certainly is, yeah. It's sometimes you just look at it and think that's a sheer miracle that person's all stuck under a crane. But I can only say there, but for the grace of God, and you know, we are fortunate. Construction in the UK is one of the safest construction industries in the world, and you know, there's reasons for that. You know, people don't genuinely take risks. Most of the accidents these days are caused by people just doing something that's just stupid. As opposed to kind of calculated engineering risks, you know, for the most part, people have got it pretty much nailed down. But you do still get the odd cockwomble, as an architect said to me the other day when he was describing somebody that wanted to put a gantry over a footbridge that was on top of a viaduct that has got no weight bearing capacity. You do get people that do stupid stuff.
Just hiring some sky hooks, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, get down juice and Skyhooks are 10 a penny at the moment.
Oh, I love it. What heroes and inspiration in your life? Who stands out?
As an inspiration, who stands out as an inspiration? I think there's some pretty. I don't know that there's a specific person. There are certain things that I look back on, and I think, do you know what? That took real balls, or real courage, or real conviction, or you know what? You backed your own judgment, or you put yourself absolutely up and above, and you know you trained to the point of ridiculousness to achieve that sort of goal. I mean, you think about some of the achievements that Steve Redgrave did during his career. Ian Botham, another one, Frank Bruno, some of the people in sport that have actually sort of pushed themselves to the limit and then beyond to be able to execute at the level that they have done in their respective industry is pretty much nothing short of amazing. I mean, there's a whole host of people, Formula One drivers. I mean, some of the stuff that these guys put themselves through to be able to achieve what they set out to achieve as a personal kind of ambition, a personal goal, or to ultimately, I guess, kind of see how far their potential can take them, is nothing short of phenomenal. But also there's people that are not from a sporting world, that have still left quite a profound impact. There's people that have written pretty wise words in songs, and then, they don't have to be from sort of like 50, 100 years ago. Kenny Rogers' song, The Gambler, that is one song that I listen to regularly. And sometimes it kind of feels a bit like main contract in 2020, I can tell you. So some of the stuff that he's written, some of the work that Brené Brown's done, there's lots of different people that I would say that I would take reference from.
What's a guilty pleasure for you then?
What's a guilty pleasure? Wow, these questions are good. Good. What is a guilty pleasure for me? Binge listening to podcasts, I would say, probably.
Do you know what the most common answer is so far?
I've no idea.
Galaxy chocolate.
Is what, sorry?
Galaxy chocolate.
Really?
Yeah. I leave it open because, again, it's perception and filtration and all the rest. It's some people might be sailing a yacht or whatever, but Galaxy chocolate.
Galaxy chocolate.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? I've not had Galaxy chocolate. I'm a Cadbury's guy. I'm a Brummie, so Cadbury's is from Birmingham. But
what's your take in the chocolate world then? In the Cadbury's?
So my ultimate favourite chocolate has got to be probably Ferrero Rocher. And if I'm in the mood for them, I can iron out a whole box of them in one sitting. General day-to-day is probably Cadbury's Whole Nut or Cadbury's Dairy Milk. But Galaxy is definitely, it's just that, I don't know, it feels a little bit richer, a little bit more opulent maybe. Galaxy is definitely good chocolate.
How do you like your tea?
How do I like my tea? I like my tea strong, like Halle Berry.
Nice. Like it?
Yeah, I do love a cup of tea. I must admit, I do probably drink more coffee. Well, no, there's no probably about it. I drink more coffee than tea, but there's nothing better than a proper cup of rosé with a biscuit in the afternoon. That is kind of, yeah, I like the sound of that. That's my sort of mid-afternoon. Or if one of the kids or my wife's made a homemade cake, which is pretty often. They're averaging 2 a week at the moment during lockdown because they're sort of learning we're trying to kind of top up their like educational curriculum with kind of like real world skills. So Charlie's been out on site learning how to cut fence panels and do site setups, and Gemma's been teaching them cookery and stuff. So they've got like a list of meals that they need to work through by the time they go back to school in September. So cake baking is high up on their list of priorities right now. I don't think they'll ever starve anyone.
Interesting. Given your own sort of education history, have you a different take with your own kids?
Yes and no. I'm kind of the opinion that as long as they're happy in what they're doing and they're not wasting their potential, I'm fine with it. They need to do their homework, and they're not forced to do it. They do it pretty willingly for the most part. My eldest son's just done his GCSEs or not and got his mock grades, which was really hard, really challenging for him because he'd got good predicted grades, but he wanted to do even more work to kind of sort of move from being B's to A's, and didn't get that opportunity because obviously he was just awarded his predicted grades. And then he kind of went through a lot of kind of like a little bit of mental anguish that he didn't feel worthy of those grades because he hadn't sat the exams. So we had to do some work with him on that, which I found quite hard, and I know he did. But he's reasonably comfortable with that. So he's going back to do his A levels. He wants to do fashion and become a fashion designer. Charlie's just starting his GCSEs, which is really good because he's really sort of keen and super energized about doing those. Ruby's much less so. She's 10, and getting her to do her schoolwork when she's been sort of self-educating at home during Corona has been probably the biggest challenge, I would say. she doesn't mind it, but she's definitely got her pet favourite subjects, and anything else can go to hell in a handcart. She's not interested. You can chain her to the desk, and it's a challenge. So I want them to do well. I want them to fulfil their ambition, and they need to do it, and they need to do it in a disciplined manner. But ultimately, I just want them to be happy. They all know that they're not going to walk out of school and walk into a job in the business. I don't want any of them in the business, if I'm honest. They need to go off and do their own thing. If they then ultimately decide that actually, well, they want to come and work for us, then great. But I want them to have gone off and actually understand what work and the whole world looks like, working out in the hard world. And if at some point they choose to come and work in a business, then great. But equally, if they don't and that's not for them, I certainly wouldn't want to be pushing them into it. I genuinely want them to do what it is that makes them happy. And I know, because obviously Oliver's a bit older, he's a bit further down that kind of career path, and he wants to go into fashion design and ultimately work in London or Milan at one of the fashion houses. So, that's what he wants to do, and I want him to be happy, and I want him to do that. I wouldn't want to force him to do anything.
Love that. Yeah, just let them be. As you say, work to their ability as opposed to
exactly.
It's quite key.
If they can do something that they genuinely love doing and have the same passion for that I have for doing what I'm doing, then I will consider my job as a dad done.
That's quite poignant.
That's, as a parent, that's what you want. I want my children to fulfill their ambition, but I also want them to ultimately balance that with being happy individuals and well-balanced individuals. And there is no benefit, no merit in somebody sitting in some job that they hate doing for probably, let's face it, they're probably going to have to work for 60 years maybe, doing a job they don't want to do. They don't, because they've got a mortgage and 2 kids. No, I want them to do something they enjoy doing. And do you know what? If that's not quite as economically advantageous as doing something in another industry, well, it's not all about financial reward. The soul food and the emotional reward is equally as important, if not more so, because you can cut your cloth accordingly depending on what your financial state is. If you're doing a job you don't like doing and it impacts on your mental health, you've only got one edge. You can't go and get another one. So it's far more important to do something that you find fulfilling.
Absolutely. So tell us, fire in the belly, what does that mean to you? What is your fire in the belly?
What's what, sorry?
What's your fire in the belly?
What's my fire in the belly? My fire in the belly is helping people. That is what genuinely gets me motivated, gets me excited, and fires me up. Is helping other people.
Love it. So tell us, where can people listen to you, reach out to you? How can they follow you?
I'm sure they can find me. They can find me on LinkedIn, Richard Stone. They can find me at my podcast, which is called the On the Block podcast, which is on all the major platforms. They can drop me an email at rs@stonecontracts.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, but not very often because I can't sum up what I want to say in less than 140 characters. So yeah, I'm sure with those handles, people can find me at one of them.
Love it. Rich, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you for sharing, and we look forward to hearing you again soon.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation. Some interesting questions for sure.
Push you out there. That's what it's all about.
Indeed.
Thank you.